Good morning, good morning, good morning to our listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Lady D's Health and Wellness Center. We are so grateful that you purposely took the time to join us as we have a presentation on today entitled Preparation for the Future. At this moment, we're going to just take just a few seconds to have a brief word of prayer. Father, we thank you for allowing all of those, our listening audience who is out there in the airways. We ask you to bless them, continue to keep the hedge of protection around us, Lord. And we are thankful for being able to have the opportunity to share health, wellness for our global community. God bless everyone. In Jesus' name, amen. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say welcome again to the Lady D's Health and Wellness Center, where we provide educational and inspirational uh, training uh, and health information just on all levels. And our guest today is none other than Dr. Thelma um, Paul and also Dr. Clarice Otley. And we're so grateful to have them on today. Dr. Otley is going to serve as our moderator, and our presenter is Dr. Thelma Manning Hall. And Dr. Otley, I'm turning it over to you. God bless you.
Thank you, Lady Dobbs. Appreciate the opportunity always. Well, we have a dynamic speaker today. I am most impressed. She's an accomplished professional, and when I say accomplished, I mean just that. I've never met anyone who has three doctorate degrees ever in my life, and I think that is an attribute to her as a person, as an individual, and she has many degrees that help her to write the book that she's written. And she'll tell you a little bit about the book, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you the name of it. It's a beacon of light on grief, and she will be talking about bereavement and many aspects of that. And I can attest to the things that I've read in her book. And being a widow, I really wish I had had her book. I mentioned before that I'd had another person's book, but I didn't know about her book. And her book has many things that would have prevented me from a lot of grief, and still things that I can benefit from today, Dr. Hall. I really appreciate the time and the energy and the effort that you put into such a massive book that has so many details. I praise God for you. I thank God for you, and I'm glad that our paths have crossed. You are already on the West Coast, and I'm on the East Coast, and I just believe that this is divine providence. I don't believe in a coincidence. It's a divine providence that our paths have crossed, and I look forward to many more. And so, would you just take the time to go over the details that you want to share with our listening audience? And there will be some question and answers. Either you can put those in the chat if you have some questions you want to ask Dr. Hall, and she will entertain those probably when she finishes her talk. It's probably the best time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Dr. Hall, it's yours.
I want to say greetings to everyone that's on this call. And I want to thank you for being here and being on. And I hope that the Lord will bless us to work together and be informed as to what your needs are. And then we'll take it from there. So I want to start with the subject preparation for the future. And I want to give you an allegory of a step ladder. On the step ladder, you have steps that you're going up. Get the picture, we're going up. We're not going down. So the first step will represent 20 years of your life. The second step will represent 20 years of your life. The third step will represent 20 years of your life. As you go up, the fourth step will represent 20 years of your life. So we're at 80 already. 4 times 20 equals 80. When you go through the first step of your life, your parents are responsible for their first 20 years. The second step, you're responsible for your growing up, you're getting your first job, You're getting your first apartment, you're getting your first car. Everything is a first because you're experiencing your own identity. So on that third step, you're getting ready to look at your job, your retirement, and what are you going to do, when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it. That fourth step, if the Lord says the same, you're at 80, and that's a bonus. So Psalms 90, verse 10 says that the Lord will add life to you, and he'll give you 70 years, but he'll give you another added 10 years. So beyond that, it's grace. God has given us grace. So going back to our steps on this step ladder, uh, you're responsible usually for the first of everything. But when you get to your job, they usually give you an insurance package. And at that time, you're trying to figure out who's going to be my beneficiary. So when you get to that requires some serious thought. Who's going to be responsible for me at the end of my life? And this is where my book, A Beacon of Life on Grief, comes in, because that is where we want to be prepared for what's going to come. And we don't know when, we don't know any age. We see people passing for various reasons, car accidents, various reasons, heart attacks, strokes. But if we live so that you have to have a beneficiary, that's the main thing right there. Think about, who would you choose to be responsible for your life at the end of your life? So this morning, I want to talk about preparation for the future. That's where we're going to start. And we want to know who's going to be responsible for taking care of those expenses at the end of your life. Now, we're just at 20 to 40, 20-year period there that we're talking. And there is some things in the book that says you should remember. So the first chapter talks about you as an individual and what you're responsible for. So the first thing you want to do is be informed about your choices that are available to you. You have a traditional funeral and you have a memorial funeral. The traditional funeral is with a casket. The memorial funeral is with an urn. That's the two different ones. Then you can combine it if someone wants to have a casket for viewing and a combination of uh, cremation after that, and then they will go for the cremation. But you can have both. It'll just be a little costly. Now, when you document what you have in writing, this will give instructions as a will to your financial affairs, and a living will clarify your medical intent, what you want done, how you want it done, and your beneficiary will have to carry that out, or the designated person will have to carry that out for you. So you're really digging in deep, doing some soul search to see who it is that you're going to select to be that responsible person. I'll give you an example. My mom chose my sister to be her medical person, and she chose me to be her financial person. So it does not have to be one person, it can be two. And if that person passes, then you have to do soul searching again and replace that person. So it's not like standard and never changes, it's always evolving. Now, the third thing is you want to talk with your family members to include their thoughts on what arrangements you want to make. After all, you are celebrating life. So your funeral service is a celebration of life. Decide the final disposition, where you want to be buried, where you want your interment, if you want to be traditional, if you want to be memorial. And the final disposition is usually influenced by your faith and by your beliefs. So it's not like a shut and close case. It's like, what do I believe and how do I want it to be displayed? And if you want to be a church, if it's going to be a chapel, it's how you want your life to be concluded. And the fourth thing we want to talk about is decide the final disposition based on your faith and based on your beliefs. The fifth thing we want to talk about is selecting a funeral home. You want to ask for a price list so that you can stay within your budget. That's important. And then when you have to have death certificates, you need to know, this is what you should know, if it's going to be for insurance, if it's going to be for a pension, if you're going to need a death certificate for all those things that you own, and you have to go to the company to get that information and let them know that the person has passed on. Now, if you don't have that information readily available, there's going to be a lot of people around your house searching for it when you can put it in a safe place and they'll know where it is. And you only want one person to know, and that's the person you designate. If that changes, you let the new person know where you keep those documents and what they're there for. There are some things, number six, that you can prepay. And so uh, if you're thinking about a pre-need, that's where you can prepay for some of the arrangements. Number seven, your life insurance policy has a face value. So that dollar amount may not be enough for your final expenses. Stay within your budget. Know how many death certificates you need. I just went over life insurance, pension, Social Security, Veterans Administration, the bank. Some of them will ask you for an original, and some of them will take a copy. And you need to know ahead of time how many death certificates you need because they're pretty costly and it takes 2 weeks before you can get an original. So that's information that you should know. Number eight, there is a such thing as prearranged Medicaid assistance, and it's for funeral services. And you may want to check with them if you're on Medicaid to find out what those benefits are, and they vary from state to state. Number nine, government benefits can be Social Security, Veterans Administration. Find out what your eligibilities are. Now, if your husband was in the military, you may have VA benefits. If you're past the 62, 65 on up, and you're on Social Security, and that's a pension that you get, that may or may not be enough for your final burial. There are things that you need to know that you should be calling Social Security, find out what information you can so that you can prepare for your future and the end of life. Number 10, when you talk to the funeral home director, he can help you with that process. You don't have to be on your last leg. You can be young in that 2040, or you can be 40, 60. But you still need to know what the processes are so that when the time comes, you're better informed and you can make informed decisions. So let's start talking about financial affairs and putting the data in the right place. If you're in hospital or if you're in hospice, how do you want to be treated? And that's your final disposition and your final decisions. But you need to know what your personal data is. You need to know where it is also. So this is what we're going to do. Put it in a place where you know where your income tax return is, where your Social Security, the first card with your Social Security number, and the second card for the doctor with those ABC letters, and then your bank account, your bank notes, the stock, excuse me, your bonds, your safe deposit box, your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, military discharge, property deeds. Those are the kind of things you need to know where they are. Your automobile titles and anything you own. You need to know the company name, their address, their city, state, because sometimes we don't have uh, that information, and you may need it for a death certificate. You may need information for something else, but you need to have that information available, accessible to you. Now, when you know your vital statistics, you can do your flowers. You can pay for this. Know the services that you have to pay for with cash. You can have a police escort. That's if you want it. But your final disposition is the cost of a crypt, a mausoleum, a niche, the outer burial container, your vault, your interment, opening and closing of the grave, the monument memorial. So all those things you need to just find out, get more information. And then you can make an informed decision. You need to know the location of your documents and paperwork. I can't stress that enough, and tell your trusted person where they are. Everybody in the family does not need to know. All your children does not need to know. Just that trusted person. And you cannot overemphasize someone other than you need to know where those documents are. Can't overemphasize that. And then no information for arrangements. Know for sure what kind of service you want at the end of life. For me, I wanted traditional service. For my husband, he wanted cremation. There was no disagreement there. He felt very certain that I would carry out his wishes, and I did. I did a combination. I did closure for the family in the casket, and then I had the cremation after that, which is what he wanted, and we talked about it. So when I say talk to your family members about how you want to be celebrated, that's exactly a good example of how you want to be celebrated. And that went over really smooth. Now sometimes there's a delay. My husband passed on the first, but when all the family members said they wanted to come for the celebration, it went all the way to the 27th. At the end of the month, they got their hotels and their airfares. All that time was needed. When they got there, it was half that section just full with relatives. They wanted to come, they wanted to be there. So, family means a lot. Family plays a big part in your life. And sometimes you think, they don't love me, they don't care, but they do care, and they don't maybe show it like you think they should. But in the end, they celebrated his life, and he was not aware of how much he was loved. I told him, I said, you got a ton of nieces and nephews. They love you. They'll be here. We talked about it. As painful and as hard as it is for most people to talk about end of life, we talked about it. So I want to encourage you, with all the grace that God can give you, discuss your end of life plans and what you would like and how you would like for it to be arranged, the date, the time, the place, the funeral home, the church, the program, who you want on your program, what songs you want sung. And the hardest part of the church of putting a program together is that obituary. Most people don't know who the parents I won't say who the parents are, but who the birth dates. They don't have that, or where they were born. They don't have that. And they're just scrambling at the last minute, and they're calling family members here and calling family members there and trying to get this information. And that information for the obituary delays the program and delays the flow of putting things together, putting things in place. And a lot of times, last minute, those programs come, they don't look too good because the family delayed it because they didn't have the obituary worked out. So I put a form together for the obituary, and there's 14 items on there. And if it doesn't apply, they skip over that and go to the next. So that moves them right along so that they can get things done in a timely manner. Now, when we get to step 3 and we start building our career and deciding who we're going to trust, the preparation is needed for 3 reasons. You need to know, you need to know, I don't know where this is coming from, but preparation is needed for 3 reasons. How you want to be treated if you become seriously ill. That's like placed in hospice. And hospice is a place where you have professionals that's working with your loved one. And then you want to think in terms of the pain management. Sometimes they say we don't want any morphine, or we don't want, well, that is decided up front. But when the pain hits you need something to comfort you. And that's what that's for. It's not to make you addicted of anything. It's just to manage your pain. And when my sister was ill, they gave her the morphine, but she got weaker and weaker. And she said, I can't take it anymore, Thelma. I can't take it anymore. And when she said that, she meant that, and the Lord took her. But she prepared me by telling me, I can't take it anymore. So when your loved one is ill and they're terminally ill and they're telling you, listen, that's important. Listen to what they're telling you because it's important. Do not go into denial. Do not say, oh, then I'm going to leave, or we got time. It's not going to be like that. Listen to them and respect their wishes. That's what you have to do when they're in pain and they're really in a lot of pain. So you have to be there for your family and you have to know what their needs are and you be there when they need you the most. So the 5 wishes that consist of you select the person that you want to make those decisions. And then this can change time and circumstance. Determine the kind of medical treatment you want. That's whether you want life support or not. Now, my husband and I again talked about that, and we did not want life support. We did not want to just let the doctors keep us hanging on, and we knew we weren't going to make it. So he decided up front, no life support. Well, it didn't work out like that. He went into the emergency room. They left him there for a long period of time. And over in the morning, 2:30, they called me and they said, your husband's heart stopped, but we resuscitated him and he's in ICU and he was on life support. Well, they didn't talk to me, and I'm showing you how this works. You say one thing, but at the hospital, they have rules and regulations that they have to comply with for health purposes and health reasons. So they did what they were supposed to do, and they resuscitated him, even though he had a medical directive. They didn't have time to go to the file and pull the medical directive to see what they just went right at it, doing what they're supposed to do health wise. And so he ended up in ICU. And I said to them, I said, well, you have him here in ICU. He does not want to be here. We've talked about this, and I'm going to leave him here for 7 days. And if you cannot do anything for him in 7 days, you'll have to take him off that life support because that's not what he wanted. And true to form, they were not able to bring him back. They were not able to do anything but just let him lay there and pump fluids in him. So don't be dismayed when things don't go according to what we actually have in writing and what we actually want done. Sometimes they don't. And so I'm giving you this information so that you can let your heart lay down. Don't get upset. Don't start yelling and hollering because when somebody leaves you, that's a lot of emotions. So you have to be informed in order to keep yourself controlled. And then you can't be controlled if you don't have the information to help you be controlled. And a lot of times we think, oh, the Lord is going to make a way and the Lord is going to help me be calm. And you put everything on the Lord. Some things is your responsibility. So with that, I want to tell you that you can determine how you want people to treat you, and you can determine if you want to go to a hospice, if you want your family to take care of you, or if you want to go to a facility. Now, on that note, my husband and I talked about that, and he said, I do not want to go to a nursing home. When they mentioned a nursing home to him early on before he got to the point where he couldn't talk, he raised up and his voice thundered out, no, no nursing home. That's how determined he was about not going to a nursing home. Now that's that part. But when it comes to hospice care, that's palliative. They've got all the professionals there to take care of your loved one. It's not there for the end of life, it's there for comfort. And it's also there to give you a break. And then you can make up that decision, call around to see what you can find out about hospice care because that's important. Sometimes we're so busy taking care of our loved ones that we just wore out and we need a break. And that's what palliative care will do for you. It'll give you that break. So you can determine what you want your loved ones to know. I just say, we had our discussion. It was not easy. It was hard for me to hear what he said he wanted to do. And I said, I will do it. And that's what I did. And one of the nephews said, I had so many operations, and I came out of it. I said, but you're in your 20s, and my husband is in his 80s, and that makes a difference. He's not going to snap back like you did, and the doctors have decided this is all they can do. And what you're saying is like not founded. It's not medically founded, and it's not logically founded. So sometimes relatives have input, but their input is not medically sound, it's not age appropriate, and you have to think of those things also. So, going on to your fourth step, if the Lord blesses you in your preparation to get to the fourth step on your ladder and you get to be 80, there's still five areas that you need to make decisions about, and that would be the vital statistics. And you need to know who's going to pay for the bill and who's going to collect the data and the paperwork that you put away. And then you got to decide the arrangements within a few hours. So I'm going to go to my book, and that's going to tell you what those areas are. Uh, 10 things everybody should know. Decisions must be made, and advanced planning for end of life must be done. So on page one in the book, it tells you about a meeting that I went to, the pamphlet that I read, and then it tells you about choices that you have to make. But of those 10 things, let's do this. Be informed about the choices available, how you would like to be remembered, and the funeral and cremation service should be personalized to reflect your wishes and should bring comfort to your family and your friends. That's one of the 10. The second thing is your wishes need to be documented. Don't just say this is what I want and it's verbal and it's not in writing, and then you got all this argument as to no, we don't want this, yes, we want that. It's in writing. There's no argument. Smooth, it's a smooth transition here. So many people think that they can take care of everything by writing a will, establishing a living will, or even purchasing their cemetery plot. But that's not all. It's more to it. And I just told you, you got opening, closing, that's money, and you got to decide whether or not it's going to be Saturday or Sunday or Monday. Your weekend is higher cost wise if you do a Saturday funeral. The reason for that is you got union grave diggers, the salary is double. It's going to be a little costly there for that. And these are the things that you don't take under consideration because you got a brain fog. You're just thinking, let the funeral director do it. Let the funeral home make all these decisions. I can't think. That's why we do it ahead of time. Prepare for the future. Know that the Lord is going to take us away from here one day. We just don't know when. And so a simple will give you instructions on how to handle the individual's financial affairs while they're living. But the living will is going to tell you exactly how you want your things carried out. The third thing you want to talk about is your family and incorporating their wishes. A funeral or memorial service is an important part of the grieving process. Family members and loved ones alike. The service provides an opportunity to express their grief, share their memories, and celebrate a life well lived. And that's the part I was telling you where my husband wanted. He said, "Oh, nobody will come, just cremate me." I said, "No, you got family, let them have closure." And that's where we agreed. So when you start thinking selfishly about, I don't want this and I don't want that, think twice about the I don't wants. And think in terms away from yourself to others who love you, who want to say their goodbyes. It's like when people commit suicide, that's selfish. They're not thinking about their family and what that's going to do to their family and how much heartbreak that's going to cause and, you know, trauma. That's hard on the family. So don't think about yourself, think about others. End of life preparation for your future. how you want to leave here, and how you want that service to be, how you want to be remembered, and how you want your family to celebrate you. And number four, for final disposition, you have to choose whether you want a mausoleum or an entombment or interment or a cremation garden. Sometimes these things are important and they make an impression, but you're thinking in terms of your faith and your belief. I don't want to say that you can't do what you want to do. If that's what you want to do, talk it over with your family, talk it over with your minister, and then come to a conclusion. Don't be afraid to ask the funeral homes for their price list because sometimes they're different. And if it's a full scale funeral home, they may have charges for upgrades. If it's a medium or mediocre funeral home that don't have all the bells and whistles, their price may be a little different. And then there's other funeral homes that's just getting started. They may also have a lesser price. I know one family was going to do a funeral service and they didn't know what they were doing. And they went to a person who had just started and he was working out of one of those sheds. And so the son said he was referred to this person and the father went with him to see where this funeral home was. It wasn't a funeral home. It was a shed that he had rented. And so the father said, "Oh no, we're not going to use that one." So these are the kind of things that you have to do while you're okay, while your brain is functioning. If you wait till the end and something tragic happens, you'd be surprised. You cannot think clear. You want somebody else to do that for you, but that's not the time for you to pass it on to someone else. And so I'm only giving you examples of things that happen to real people. Real people. Now consider planning and the pre-paying for your arrangements. Planning your funeral or cremation in advance can take a lot of detail, but you take care of it ahead of time. And but only pre-arranging, pre-paying for your services can take care of actual expense of funeral or take care of the actual expenses of a funeral or cremation service ahead of time. Easing the future financial burden on your surviving loved ones. Your price lock is when your rate is combined in pre-need funeral insurance. Your choice of a cemetery, the vault, opening and closing of the grave, and the marker can be locked in to your pre-need plan. And that's what you talk to the funeral director about. And that way, when the prices go up and down, you're locked in at that price that you went in at, and it doesn't change no matter how long it takes. 20, 40, 60, 80, it's locked in. Now, for the pre need, sometimes the family decide they want to do more than what that pre need dollar amount is. Then they have to pay the difference. So don't think it's locked in and you can just buy the best and the most expensive casket in your will here. You don't have that. So when you have a pre-need and say it's for $10,000 and you decide you want that funeral to be 15,000, you got to come up with that 5,000 out of your pocket. So be careful when you go to the funeral home and say, "I like this casket," and they're not telling you right then that that's going to be an extra cost and it's over and above what you're locked in for. You find that out when they give you the final document, the final voucher. So be careful there. And the other thing you need to know is when uh, you don't have enough money or you don't have any money, you can go to other sources and you talk to your funeral home as to what they're connected with. Sometimes funeral homes are connected to agencies that can help you, but you can't have a lot of pride and say, "I'm not going to tell them I don't have any money." Open up, be honest. This is where we are. We weren't expecting this death. GoFundMe may or may not be everything that you need. but be realistic now about your future later and see what you can do to plan that. Now let's go to number 7. Why insurance may not be enough. Usually, life insurance, as well as final expense insurance, provides a one time lump sum benefit after death has occurred. And sometimes there's a fine print on the policy. It is important for you to read your policy prior to the death of a loved one. If the person passed one day after that age factor, then you don't get any money for that. And the whole life, your entire life, and the insurance company will have an age limit, and term life has an expiring age limit. There is no guarantee that the funds will not be consumed by the long illness or serious accident. An example of that is, I hope you don't mind me talking about my husband. That's only somebody I really know. Uh, he had an insurance policy. He took it out when he was younger, and the age limit was 76. When my husband turned 76, they terminated that insurance. So you be very careful that your policy, if it's a term life, what's the expiring age? If you're over that age, they don't have to renew it either. And look at the money you paid into that insurance company. So I'm looking at that and I said, oh my, that was an eye opener for me, that you can pay into an insurance company, reach your age, and it's terminated because that's what the policy reads. And you without insurance at your old age. Now, how you gonna get another insurance policy at a lower rate and you're older in age? And when they put that finger across there and you look at that dollar amount, you say, I can't afford that. That's just for you to think about. Now, a prearranged funeral or cremation service and Medicaid assistance. If you plan to apply for Medicaid assistance for yourself or a loved one, prearranged funeral agreement can be extremely beneficial in meeting your needs. You can consult an attorney before applying for Medicaid assistance to learn more about your state requirement. However, some states will have to declare your assets. Assets must be liquidated, especially if you have a home, or assign your income to pay the facility for your care. Now, that may sound a little jumbled, but when you go into a nursing home or you go into a health facility, they sometimes assisted living, they take your check, and that pays for all your expenses while you're there, and they give you, say, like $90 out of your income because they're supplying food, everything. Then when you get ready, like say you pass, what do you have? So they're saying going in, if you have a home, you got to get rid of that, liquidate that. You got to pay for the care at assisted living or any facility that you're going to be at. Medicaid may come in and help you with that. So you need to look into that. If you have a loved one that's receiving Medicaid, then you see what the benefits are there. If you do not have a loved one that's doing Medicaid, and you steady getting older, and our family members can't take care of me, I gotta find some place to go. I'm leaving the gas on. I'm leaving things that's becoming hazardous. They say, oh, she can't live by herself any longer. You go like, what am I gonna do? So that's when, if you have a home, they get rid of it. Some people try to do little things to manipulate the system. I'll say it like that. So they'll give the home to another relative, put it in their name. But with the computer, you get caught. So don't be too smart. You can't outsmart that technology, okay? So let's go to find out ahead of time what government benefits are eligible for. So if you're eligible for the VA, they're only going to pay a small dollar amount. If you're eligible for Social Security, they're only going to pay a small dollar amount. And I'm just talking $255, $250. That's not going to be a large sum to help you with your funeral expenses. So don't count on that. but it'll help with flowers maybe. See what I'm saying? Now, that takes care of that. Talk with your local funeral home regarding a burial, a cremation. Because a cremation requires a niche, and if you don't want to do a niche, you take it home with you, and you still don't know what to do with it. So sometimes this can be overwhelming, and sometimes it's complicated, and sometimes you just don't know what to do. But you can always talk it over with your funeral director. If you chose a funeral home, you have a funeral director, you can talk it over with your funeral director. And these are the 10 things you need to. Now, I have a few more minutes and I want to go over what I have so you can see how this works. In chapter one, when it says be informed, that's when you go and find out the information. And again, I want to use my husband and I so you can know. We decided, I already told you, one's going to be cremated and one's going to be buried, traditional funeral. That's what being informed of your choices that are available mean. Number two, include in your will what you want and how you want it. And that paperwork has to be filed with my husband was a veteran, so you go to the Veteran Administration, you have to do a case. They write it up, and then the veteran is going to be okay whenever he passes because there's a case already set up with the veteran cemetery admin office. All right. So if you're making notes, that's how that works. If your husband is veteran, retired military, 20 years or more, he has a privilege and a right to be buried in a national cemetery. If he just went into the service and did his bare minimum, he goes to a regular cemetery. That's something everybody does not know. They don't always know about that national cemetery. Now, we can go on and on and on, but I want to do everything here we've already talked about. Um, at the VA cemetery, when you make your case up, your husband is the veteran. He gets the benefits of being a veteran and serving his country. But his wife has to pay at least $480 if it doesn't go up. Right now it's at $480 for burial. So that's information that you'll find out when you go to the VA admin office. So the Medicaid information did not apply to us. So we would skip number 8. It does not apply to us. And some of the things you'll find does not apply to you. So I've already given you that information. Now, I want to leave 15 minutes for question and answers, okay? For your vital statistics, you need to have your name, your address, your city, state, and a phone number, the date of birth, where you were born, your family race is going to be Caucasian, Hispanic, African American, mulatto, Asian American. This is information that you have to know: the marital status and the maiden name of your spouse if it's a female. And international citizenship, you need to know that. And then you'll need to know your father's birthplace, you need to know your mother's maiden name, and the social security number. And if they served in the military, you need to know what armed force they served in. And the service, whether it was an honorable discharge or other than honorable discharge, and where they were discharged from. Now, that information is for your death certificate. And then what their occupation was. Want to know that. And the industry that they worked in, they want to know where that was. So there's a lot of information that we don't know until we get to that place. But if you prepare for the future and you start now, you can gain a lot of information. Make yourself a notebook and put all this information in it. So some of the things you'll have to pay for, and then your estate and your inheritance may not be applicable to everybody. Your funeral expenses may be greater than what you thought. Permanent memorialization and grave markers, and uh, I found out that they have a little insignia for the niche that's not used for the grave when you bury a person in the grave site. And then there's people who can help you. The funeral director can help you. The clergy can help you. But don't dump everything on your pastor in your church when you can do some of this yourself ahead of time. And a lot of times we wait till the last minute and we want the pastor to do it all or his staff to do it all when you didn't do all the due diligence that you should have done. Now, like I said, the hardest part is putting that obituary together and all that information I just called off. If you do it ahead of time, that information of your vital statistics, it carries over from your death certificate, your medical advance. It carries over to hospice. It carries over to bank. All that information it carries over, and in every chapter, all this information that's in chapter one carries over to the next chapter, the next area of your life. Now it is 7:46. I'm going to yield my time to question and answers. And I pretty much covered everything that I needed to cover. And there's more. So I just went over 99 things that you need to do at the end of life, before the end of life. May the Lord bless you. I'm open for question and answer.
Well, Dr. Hall, I've got some myself I'd like to ask of you. I do want to make sure that there aren't any questions that's in the chat, so I can always ask mine later. Um, you mentioned something about your husband, how you had the traditional funeral, and then after that, you went to his wishes, which were to be cremated. Um,
Yes.
what kind of cost in terms of monies do you need to save up if that's the case? I certainly can appreciate that. My husband asked to be cremated, and he was out of the country, and they had some difficulty. They didn't want to cremate him because he was in another country. Um, I don't know whether they didn't want to cremate him. It's kind of foggy as to the details, but I paid for two funerals,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm wondering if the cost is synonymous or whether you have found that it is, being that you were a funeral director in your years, you probably would know this kind of information.
You have international laws for the various countries, and that's what you have to abide by. My brother passed in Hawaii, and it took them months to get just a death certificate and to transfer his remains, which was cremated, over to the States, and he was going to be placed in a national cemetery. So we had to wait that time out. But what was kind, they said, I don't have to travel to Hawaii to get all the paperwork done. They let me do it electronically. When he was shipped over, the funeral home received him. We had a memorial service for him, and then we drove him to the National Cemetery. So international law makes a difference. That's just Hawaii. When you're talking about other countries, that's a whole nother mix of waiting.
Yeah,
And
I spent 3 weeks
they,
waiting for them to send his body.
they tell you what they can do and what they can't do, and then they take a good time doing it. Did
That's
you find
exactly what happened.
I was going to say, did you find that to be true? All right.
Yes, yes, I did. It took 3 weeks for his body to come. We had a memorial because we waited 3 weeks. My sons and I were just in limbo. We just didn't know. And my brother kept asking the consulate, the ambassador, where he was, can't you do anything? He knew the sorrow that we were going through, waiting. I mean, that's another grief of waiting to move to the next level so that you can have closure. But it was very traumatic, and if there's any insight that anybody can have that will prevent them from going through that kind of grief. It was grief added upon grief, is what it was. But God was good, and He sustained us, and we got through it. And it's 8 years later, and I'm still grateful for how He got through it. It was a fog. I went through a fog. There were many things that I didn't remember.
Yes.
Um, because that's just what happens when you don't expect it. I didn't expect him to die. He was on vacation, and you don't expect people to die when they're on vacation. And he was with my son, but he was alone when he died. My son had returned back to the States. So that would be, I think that's a helpful piece of information, because everybody doesn't go out of the country, but there are people who do, and
Yeah.
just to know that.
But when you go out of the country, their laws are different from the United States, and they don't always think kindly of the United States. So you have that aspect of them delaying.
Yes.
We deal with a lot of things.
Yeah, even though we may think it's unnecessary,
Yep.
uh, we have to abide by what they say. And if we can't hurry them up. Um, there's nothing you can do in this. It's a time frame that you have to wait on the Lord to do the executing. You
Mhm.
have to know that the patience that He tells us that we are to have as we wait, He will be with us in that moment. And that was a divine answer from the Lord that I got, that when it's necessary, because God is in control, and I had to resolve that God was in control of even that. Um, Now I have a plot, and for some people who have a plot with my husband, but I may be leaving the area where the plot is, so I don't know what usually happens in a case like that. I don't think I'll be buried there.
You can be shipped back to your spot. You
Be
can
shipped
off
back.
ship out. You can have your service wherever you are, or you can have them just ship you straight from the mortuary
Mhm.
back to the city state where your plot is for burial. Hmm.
Okay, let's see if anybody else has anything to say.
I would like to say something, Dr. Thelma. Thank you so much. I appreciate your sharing about the insurance policy terms and conditions had changed. And I would just like to say to our listening audience that it is important that you keep abreast, because they're not going to come and tell you, oh, by the way, uh, the policy terms and conditions are renewed, not renewed, but revised. So everything that's out there is trying to keep as much money that they have. And so you want to definitely stay up on those terms and conditions. And Dr. Clarice, I wanted to say to you and to our listeners, in the event that you are still a widow and or widower, and you get married again, years have passed and you get married again. Well, in most cases, you're not going to want to be buried with your first husband um, in the generosity, but you certainly could have a family member or sibling in the event of their loss, who would be able to utilize that plot. So that's a thought that you can entertain as well. But I definitely appreciate the information about having the what do you call it, the your eulogy written out in advance, and having all of the information, because it's so true. In grief, brain fogs and all, a lot
Yes.
of times we don't think. If you could share that again, the importance of having that information filled out. Can you expound on that, Dr. Thelma?
You would like for me to go over that again?
Yes, just briefly, just the importance of.
You,
which why.
you, you said it all. You cannot think clearly because you're grieving. Sometimes you're even in shock. Sometimes you're in denial.
Mhm,
Sometimes you're just stressed out.
mhm,
Sometimes you're just frozen in space and you cannot think. And they can ask you what your name is, and you think twice about telling them what your name is because you just froze.
right.
I can remember talking to my sister when my mother passed. I said, "Are you going to help me write this obituary? Are you going to help me put the program together?" She said, "No, I'm going to wash anything to do with something other than you. You deny, you push yourself away from it." And that's what she did. I said, "Would you just turn the computer on for me?" I was at her house. So she turned the computer on, but she didn't want to do anything about putting a program together, putting that information together.
Mhm,
I'll wash, she said. We didn't need her to wash. We needed her to put that program together. But that's how losing a loved one affects you. You cannot think. And as much as you think you can, you will find out you cannot.
you cannot.
And I'll say, as administratively astute as I am,
Mhm,
I was I was in motion, but that's all I was. My
mhm,
sister said, "How did you do it?" I said, "The Lord." I was just going through the motion. I
mhm,
put the program together. I did this, I did that. But that was just motion. It
right,
wasn't because I was so alert, but I was stepping up to what the others couldn't do
right,
because it had to be done.
right.
So I have somebody else look it over to say, what did I do? Did I do this right? Did I do that right? I even talked to the funeral director. I said, what else do I need to do? And my brain is still, in shut. And so I can't emphasize enough how important it is to do the planning and prepare yourself before the time comes, because when the time comes, you don't know how that's going to affect you.
Right.
There's a lot of things that happen. I
And
had I had a scripture that said, Matthew 24:42. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord does come. I want to put that in there so that you know that it's scripture based. You
yeah,
have to watch and pray
yes,
because you don't know when the Lord is going to come for you. Not crack the sky and say, "Come, my people," and the rapture takes place. He can come for you before the rapture takes place. And those that are asleep, they're going to be caught up. We that remain going to be caught up with those that are going to get up first. But I said, Lord, I think I want to be caught up. You may not honor my request, but those that are asleep is going to rise first, and those that are remaining here on earth, we're going to be caught up. And I want to be caught up, but I said, he don't have to honor my request. He don't have to. But that's just a thought.
and age. A lot of perhaps our listening audience may think, or we're just in an era where they feel, well, I don't have to deal with that because,
Mm,
I'm not, they put an age on it. Well, I'm not old,
yes.
with what is happening now, it can happen any day. And the scripture that you just quoted is very appropriate. We don't know the day or the hour, but if you can have things written up and put in a file and let your family know, and I've shared with my son, I said, look for the particular color folder. And my husband, I
Mhm.
said, look for that folder. Everything is in that folder. But
Yes.
definitely, after so long, we take it for granted. And it's called updates.
That's right.
Because as your career changes, your titles may increase or whatever, you have to make sure you follow through. And it's advisable to make sure everything is updated. It
Yes.
saves the family so much, so much. Because when my first husband died, we literally were putting things together. And one of the statements that he had shared at that time before his demise, I said, well, where is your particular documents or whatever? He said, you'll find it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Because sometimes they're dealing with their illness
Yes.
and they're in denial. And
Yes.
so it's better to be have the cognizant of mind, the presence of mind, so you can go ahead and get that accomplished. And thank God for the internet and electronics and automation. You can have that file where you could send it to the family members, and just in case one is not there that you've designated, you know.
Yes.
So, Dr. Clarice, would you like to add anything else before we summarize everything, or in summary?
I can relate to all this being said. I mean, you'd have to really walk through it to understand the importance of what Dr. Hall has said and what you also added, Lady Dobbs. And because I've walked through it, I can speak to some of the things that were pointed out. Um, when my mother died, I knew she was dying weeks before, but the day I didn't know, of course. So I told my cousins that I wanted them to pull the obituary together. My aunts, my cousins, they all knew about my mother just like I did. I said, because I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be someone that you trust that you can get them to do the obituary because that was going to be hard for me. I just knew that about myself. And for my husband, we had just had a birthday party for him, a 70th birthday party, and he wrote all the things that he wanted to be said about himself from his career to his childhood. So I already had his. I used the same words that he had used, so that was a good thing. But
Mm-hmm.
it is very important that that we that we take time to go through this very valuable tool. It's not something a subject that you want to talk about, but life is real and death is real, and it's coming to all of us. Whether it'll be you before your husband or him before you, it's going to be, unless you all die together. But it's going to happen, and I think to be proactive about what to do will save your children, will save your family just a whole lot of unnecessary heartache if you can be so selfless to do
Mm-hmm.
that for them. It's not for me, I'm doing it for them.
Right.
Very
Beautiful.
good. Very good. I will say to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in, and we pray you'll come back to us on, I think it's the 15th,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
the 15th for part two. And we want to let you know that this particular category that Dr. Thelma and Clarice, Dr. Clarice, have agreed to do is dealing with bereavement. But there are so many different levels to bereavement, not just of a loved one, but of bereavement happens in so many different uh, categories: the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a pet, which many consider a family, part of the family. But there's
Mm-hmm.
different stages to bereavement. And I'm looking forward to Dr. Thelma and Dr. Clarice dealing with those different areas. So those of you that are listening in, just let us know, because sometimes you don't deal with it. You don't identify with it as bereavement, but it's a loss.
Yes, it
So whether it's a relationship, the loss of your dog, or the loss of being feeling self value,
mm-hmm.
then we encourage you. There is something that you can glean and gain from the valuable nuggets that are being released from these two individuals. Also, spiritual. You know, the loss of having the relationship that you have with Christ and wanting to get back to the platform where you once were. So we encourage you and we thank you, everybody, for listening in. And we look forward to seeing you for part two on the 15th. May God bless you. And we pray that God continue to keep the hedge of protection around you on all levels. This is our prayer for you. Be in good health. God bless you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Lady Dobbs. Thank you, Dr. Thelma Hall. Thank you so much.
Bless you.
Thank you, ladies. God bless.